I'm Carolyn Jordan, and welcome to the Variety Screening Series presented by Berger. Here are the laser projectors that we all enjoy. Oh, can you hear me now?
Just scream. Just yell.
Is this working now? Okay, I'm just going to yell. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Well, I know, but I'm afraid that someone's going to do something.
Still no.
Anytime there's an audio problem.
The mic is on.
But the volume is down.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to shout. Can you hear me now in the back?
Yes.
Okay. Please join me in welcoming director Berger. Producer Tessa Ross. Emerson. Volker Bertelmann. Costume designer Lisy, Christl.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you everybody for being here at our Variety Screening Series presented by Berger. And I just want to say I was looking forward to this so much. This was one of my personal favorite films of the year, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you.
As you all know, the movie is nominated for 8 Academy Awards. Everyone on the stage except me are Oscar nominated this year. That includes Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Ray Fiennes. So we have a lot to talk about. First of all, one of the things I really loved about this film was I thought it was one of the most complete movies of the year. And what I mean by that, from the writing to the wonderful acting to the directing to the editing and the costumes and the score and just every single aspect of it really came together so beautifully. But it always starts with the story. Could we begin, maybe Tessa and Michael, you could start with this. How did you find the script, and tell me about how the project began to come together?
Well, I didn't find the script. I found the book, and the book I found is very few chapters when I was given them by some friends of Robert Harris's editor. And Robert Harris, you may know, is a really wonderful, popular novelist, and a lot of his work has been turned into film.
Louder.
Louder, sorry, louder. Sorry, thank you. I'm holding it closer now. Is that better?
Yeah.
Hooray, thank you. When I optioned it, I thought about who could write it. And the writer that I approached was the writer who had written an adaptation of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I don't know if you've seen that movie. And he had done an amazing job of that. And I knew him, and he was a gentle, clever soul. Who was also an ex-Catholic. He'd been an altar boy, and he read the novel and delivered the most extraordinary first draft. And that's really when we started to know that we had a film. And of course then it was about Edward. And once I'd met Edward, and I'd absolutely fallen in love with Edward's work on a series called Patrick Melrose. I don't know if you've seen that, which was absolutely amazing. And Edward and I met and had a lovely time getting to know each other. And then I started to offer him projects he didn't like at all. And eventually I sent him the script and he absolutely loved it, and we started to build a film together. So that's really how it started. And really, nothing is a film, until, as you know, until you have a script and a director. And then everything else follows that director.
Well, I spoke with Nick a few weeks ago, and he said that both of the two of you, when you started with the script, talked about what a thriller it was. And could you maybe just tell us a little bit about what inspired you?
I felt that, Peter's writing is wonderful because his movies, his scripts always, and I'd read a lot of his scripts before, just even produced movies. I read the script of Tinker Tailor, just out of interest how he writes, and I just loved him from the words on the page without knowing him. Because what he does so beautifully, it's always two stories. There's a plot, in this case kind of a driving film for the search of the next spiritual leader, which you could call a thriller, but also a wonderful interior journey for the lead at the heart of the film. And I love when movies do that, when they're just not. I get a little bit bored when it's just a plot. You're like, yeah, okay, it's a nice plot, but what's the movie really about? In this case, it's about Cardinal Lawrence's inner journey, and but the let's say on the surface level, it felt to me we could make a great political thriller from the 70s, a Pakula movie, like Parallax View or The President's Men, that type of film, and with that comes a wonderful precision and a restraint, and all that, and the chess game in the beginning of the film felt like there had to be like an architectural, precise film, and all that comes with that kind of guides then your pacing of how you edit and how you shoot it and how you focus on your main character, and that was basically the beginning of it. Pakula, I would say. We just looked at Pakula movies and said, let's make a movie like that.
Griff, tell us about how you and Edward worked together and your inspiration for shaping the performance of Cardinal Lawrence.
I met Edward and immediately just liked his vibe. He was cool and alert and curious, and the way he talked about the film. The script was, as Tessa said, it was a wonderful script. It was a page-turner to read. I was drawn to Lawrence as a great character, as Edward said, with an interesting inner life. And so that was the first thing I wanted to talk to Edward about, was the inner journey of Lawrence. And I guess what you're looking for as an actor is you want to sort of find a middle ground where you're connecting and your views and your sensibilities are kind of bonding. And that's what I felt. I mean, we initially there's things like clothes and costumes which had to be sorted, and I had a fitting with Lisy in New York, so I was working there. But the key meeting I think we both remember having was when we were in Rome and we went to a restaurant and we went through the script scene by scene, speech by speech, moment by moment, to get to grips with what is going on in the heart of a scene, or what's going on in the mind and heart of the characters. Obviously, in my case, I'm interested to know what that is with regard to Lawrence, and that was the beginning of our creative partnership, that conversation.
Michael, maybe you can wrap this next question. Obviously, you cannot film in the Vatican, which I'm sure
None of us could ever call him Michael. That's wonderful. I'm going to start doing it.
Call me Michael from now on.
But I'm sure that presented sizable logistical challenges. Would you tell us about those and how you overcame them?
Sure, I mean, sizable is exactly correct. You can't, for many reasons, you can't shoot in the Sistine Chapel. We also didn't engage with the church because we didn't want anyone to say you can't they were unhappy with anything or happy with anything we sort of wanted to work on our own. So we just built our own Sistine Chapel, as one does. And full size, complete front, all walls, the balcony, about 45 feet on the sides, and then about 60 feet front and back. And in the front, you could see the actors when you came in, were looking at the Final Judgment all the time. So you had that space surrounding you that made you feel that you were in that room. And it was very interesting because watching those artisans create the Michelangelo work, I went up to one of them one day and I was just looking at him like, how you feeling? And he had the biggest grin on his face. He was so happy. And it was just beautiful to watch him work. But that was a major logistic. And the other, a similar sort of connected logistic is the corridors and the rooms that Edward had an amazing vision for. That vision was so specific and wonderful, we didn't find it anywhere in Rome. There was always something very important, legitimately, that we just couldn't do. We'd find a corridor that was long enough and it was too wide and it wouldn't give the claustrophobia that you wanted. Or we'd find rooms and they were wood. And we'd have to go, okay, well, if we do this, we'll make them all into marble. And by the time we figured it all out, we're like, we should build it. And we wound up having just enough space on the side of the Sistine Chapel to build those long corridors and elevator. And then our production designer, Susie Davies, built this brilliant sort of set of rooms that were all kind of modular, that you could move around to create ante-room, main room, bedroom, bathroom, and then change it around for a different person's room. I would come onto set and I would literally go around a corner and walk into a wall because it hadn't been there the previous day. But those were brilliant solutions to how to deal with the fact that we had limited time, limited budget, but we had wanted to make sure that we were able to do what Edward wanted to do so brilliantly, and it was fun to kind of solve those problems together.
Well, you created such a rich world with certainly the production design, but also the costumes. Lisy, would you talk a little bit about how you researched and what you wanted to convey as well through the costumes?
We did for quite a while quite a fundamental research, and I learned very quick. In 1962, the Catholic Church changed a lot everything changed, but also they changed the vestment. On a very early point, Edward, me and our cameraman, we went to Rome. We saw the original clothing, and we were not happy with the color, and we were not happy with the fabric. And thanks to Tessa, we were allowed to make everything from scratch, to use a fabric what is closer to the idea before 62, to use a color what is also closer to before 62, and you can read quite good on a choir dress who a cardinal comes, or who they are coming from, whether they are from a richer or a poorer archdiocese. And one of the codes is the lace, and so we got rid of the lace. That they all look really the same, and you can diversify them by the crosses. And if this explains the process.
I also want to say we had hundreds of costumes that were more the original style, and it was I remember Lisy saying to me what you just said. Yeah, there are hundreds here, but we're not going to use them. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? But she was very, very convincing.
that scene, the way you pace this film, just providing a little bit of information, a little bit of information, but all the twists, and also making it so powerful was withholding information. Would you talk about your general approach to that? And Nick, actually, you might want to jump in on that as well.
I think, well, first of all, we worked a long time on the script to really parse out the information at the right point and withhold it and so forth. Tessa, Peter, and I. So a lot of that work was, it's all editing. We edited the script or developed the script. And then kind of shooting is also a little bit editing or storytelling. When you do, every time you put the camera somewhere, you realize, okay, I'm not going to show this in a close-up, but just in a wide shot, or Rafe just from behind or something. You withhold something to land it at the right point. And then maybe Nick can chime in on that, on our editing process, where you finalize that, because of course you're not going to get everything right in the script, or things change, and you learn throughout the shoot, and afterwards you think, I wish we had written it that way, or maybe one more piece of information, because it doesn't quite all fit. And then Nick and I sit in a room for many months and try to space that out in the right I think withholding of information is actually one of the best tools to create tension.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it takes a while to arrive at that final pace that you see on the screen. And a lot of it is to do with, Edward mentioned earlier on our admiration for these 70s conspiracy thrillers, and the approach that they had was to be extremely rigorous with the shots in terms of, not revisiting a setup more than once and leaving it to the last possible minute, to cut. And so that was our approach. And, sometimes pace it's not about cutting, it's actually about having the confidence to we just need to look at this actor for a little bit longer, and it's somehow more nourishing, and keeps the pace because you're getting something from it. And so we spent a lot of time just looking at the pace, and the way that I've sort of learned over the years to look at it is that you spend all the time working through. It's very hard to judge pace when you're cutting a sequence or in the middle of a scene. You have to watch the film back, sort of refreshed, and I've sort of trained myself or tricked myself, I suppose, into watching films that you watch, and you sort of have to look beyond the cuts, sort of ignore all these cuts that you spent lots of time, perfecting, and you just gotta look and pay attention to the flow of information, the flow of emotion, and that's how you keep track of it, I suppose.
And you also did that so effectively with the use of sound and the absence of sound, and certainly the music. Volker, would you talk about how you created your sonic signature for the film?
Well, it was in the beginning. It was pretty clear that I wanted to find something that is a religious sound for like music that is in a way replacing choir or organ, and that I was looking for a sound that is maybe ethereal, but also modern, like a modern synthesizer in a way. I mean, we are in now and not in ancient times, so I wanted to find something that is somehow connected with my world. And I mean, I was always connected with electronic music and techno and things like that were raw and at the same time classical music. And so I looked into different instruments, and I found a glass instrument called the Christl, which was built 1952 in France by two brothers. And it's an instrument that is played with glass rods. You have 4 octaves of glass rods, and you put your hands in water, and you rub the glass rods, and they are connected with cylinders of metal. And so the vibration of the glass rods moves into the cylinder, into these metal plates, and they start to distort the glass sound. And that's the sound that always comes in, that we hear already quite early in the beginning when Cardinal Lawrence is actually kneeling next to the dead Pope, and we see his face very close, and you just hear this shadow of the theme appearing in his head, kind of. And I think that was, in a way, I tried to find a tonality that expresses a kind of religious idealism that somehow makes it more stronger, the struggle of everyone, like trying to be somehow, specifically Lawrence is always struggling with, the idealism of religion and finding faith, and there's doubts, which I know from my religious upbringing as well as a musician. There's always, you always have doubts about things in the first place, and they are not bad. They actually create an open space for finding new things. So his character was very close to me, and the instrument worked well. I sent it to Edward, and sometimes you send something out and somebody says, what is that? You have to find something else, please. And Edward is sometimes quite like that, which is very nice. But that is also very. I think this discussion is so nice because I have to grow, and I want to grow, and that's why I'm on Earth. I would say to learn and grow, and I think he's a very fantastic companion in that approach.
You have all of these twists and reveals throughout the film, and then one might think that the final surprise is the election of the new pope, but that's not what you had in mind. There's a final surprise, and when Cardinal Lawrence enters the room for that conversation with the newly elected pope, you did not have a score. The editing was very minimalist. You didn't cut very much, and really just focused on the performance and the words. I'd love to just discuss with all of you, this is a collaborative process. Just let's break down that one scene, which is so powerful. Rafe, would you start with your performance in that scene?
Mainly a scene of listening. Clearly I enter the scene with a sort of concern, and I guess almost a kind of panic, I suppose, that Lawrence has just heard that there is an issue with Benitez. So I remember accessing, I suppose, a kind of rising frustration as I enter the room and I confront him, and it was quite a confrontational energy, I suppose, I was looking for. And then Carlos starts speaking. It's his words, it's his speech, it's his account of his life, which is the body of the scene. And it was clearly, sometimes I have to say, the best experiences don't involve a lot of discussion. When you have a director as sensitive as Edward and everyone's ready, it's really about just, we rehearse the scene, we rehearse it, the actor offers, and the director probably usually doesn't say anything because he's going to just, he's figuring out the shots and the camera. And only as the scene is being shot that there is, hopefully, some suggestion or something from the director that doesn't intrude into what's developing between the actors. And if the developing of that connection, in this case Lawrence listening to Benitez, if that energy is working, and this is, the director, Edward, does not interfere, or it's just finding camera positions to allow that thing, what's happening, to grow. It might be in a huge close-up, but there's stuff going on, and I think the best directors, Edward is one of the best directors I've ever worked with. That's not just flattery because you're all here. But he has this gift of listening, and it's very important that directors listen. I don't mean literally listen with the ear, but they listen energetically to what's going on. And same with Stefan Fontaine, our wonderful cinematographer. That energy between cinematographer and director is crucial. So when people say, what did you do? You just go on and start to do it. There isn't a lot of discussion. There can be. If there's a real issue emerges, sure, people have to stop. Usually, if they stop and discuss, the energy dissipates. So the ideal thing is it's just happening, and it's just being shot, and a little is said.
I mean, maybe you mentioned the editing. We probably started that scene with, 3 times as many edits in our first version. And the biggest, I'm sorry, I don't want this to be a mutual flattery here, but the biggest gift then is to have actors like Carlos and Rafe, where a lot is happening between them. And you realize in the end, and you actually realize you can ruin a performance and a tension between people with editing it out. Rafe is listening, he doesn't have many words in the scene, he actually just sat there and listened. So he's listening, yeah, and a lot of things are happening on the face, and if we keep cutting to the words that are being delivered, then you can ruin that process that goes on in his face. If you remember, one of the best endings is in Michael Clayton, where George Clooney sits in the back of the taxi, and it's just a minute on his face, and there's a lot going on, and basically the entire movie goes on his face. And the same with Rafe. You realize, if we just let the scene a little bit longer on his face, it tells everything. And he takes us on this journey where this character is going. And then you realize, maybe we can make it even twice as long. Yeah. And then you just chop out, like Carlos on the one side, and you just keep on Rafe, and it still works. And you stretch that to the very limit. And the same with Carlos. You stay on him, you go, we actually don't need to cut. It's much more interesting to see developing, and then I can follow them so much more. I can follow Carlos, because I'm following Rafe as he's listening, and that just creates a wonderful tension. So that's I'm sorry, Nick, did I steal your answer now?
No, I'm just trying to, well, one thing when I knew we sort of wanted to do it in as few cuts as possible, and I love that first shot of the 2 men, Benitez is sitting and Lawrence is standing over him. We really wanted to stay on that for as long as possible to withhold the first single shots of the actors, because we just felt, one, it was a beautiful shot, and also you actually feel the physical tension between the 2 men, and because they're all in the same frame. And just to speak to what Edward says, when we were cutting the scene, when we tried to make more cuts into it, somehow the scene sort of rejected it. And it wasn't working, and so we spent a lot of time on it and ended up where we are. But yeah, I don't think there's got to be only 6 cuts, 7 cuts in the whole scene.
Yeah, and it's just wonderful to watch these performers, how there's a whole shift of emotions in this scene, and if you give that space, it's just so much more powerful. It's just, I just get amazed. So many times I walk to the edit with a skip in my step, thinking, I'm gonna be watching Rafe today and discover something new. Actually, every day you discover something new, and that's really a wonderful gift. You say, look at what he did. It's just a miracle.
May I ask this audience, how did you respond to that scene? Did that scene, when Rafe responds, when Rafe's face hears the information from Benitez, what was your first reaction?
How dare she be a woman?
Oh, really?
Yeah, how dare a
So
woman
maybe-
be a woman? And I'm a Catholic, lecture and everything. And then I was like, oh wow, my own judgment.
So then with Carlos's kindness,
Yeah, because he loved him from the start.
so then that gift of his kindness to Rafe holding his
And
hand.
feminine energy in all of us.
That
It was
is
very
just-
Jesus-like.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting, isn't it? That, as Edward says, the shape of that scene starts with Rafe's nervousness, and then the shock on his face, and then the absolute generosity of Carlos towards him, of Benitez towards him to explain it. So it is a wonderful shape, which goes through so many emotions, I think, for the characters and for the audience watching these characters.
Yes, and I would say, following that, that informs the music to shut up. So, in a way, the music is not there at that moment, and I think that's so helpful for a musician to know when there are scenes where you can, compose music for, and specifically when it's so well done that you can just follow the characters. I have no need to press any key on my keyboard or on my piano, so that's fantastic for a musician. So I just wanted to add that to that.
And to leave Benitez in his street clothes makes him so much more vulnerable because he expects Lawrence to come. And I remember we discussed it, is you already in the White Castle in the middle of a fitting? And I'm very happy we decided for his ordinary street clothes, expecting Lawrence and the rest, you know.
Rafe, would you pick one more scene and talk about really just what inspired you when you were filming the given scene? Did you have a...
Why don't you pick it?
The homily, Rafe. Maybe the homily.
How about just early in the film, as you were preparing for Conclave, before there, I mean, I'm not going to pick one scene in that, but and there's such a journey that you're going through, and in the beginning you've learned of the Pope's passing, you're preparing for, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I suppose I can talk, it's easy for me to talk about the character and what in general, I suppose I became aware of the need in Lawrence to organise the conclave, which is his official role as Dean of the Vatican, to ensure the smooth running of the conclave. So that's a duty, a job involving some bureaucratic oversight, some executive decision making, and then you, the audience, are made aware because of what he says that he has some kind of crisis of faith. He says to Benitez, I think between priests to admit that I have a crisis, I have problems with prayer. Prayer is very important, essential centering point, akin to meditation, a form of meditation, but it is your private dialogue with the divine. And I think, I'm talking to priests, that conversation which happens within yourself to the other, the deity, the God, the divinity, to the mystery, that conversation is really crucial. If that's disrupted, your whole sense, your whole foundation of your calling must be shattered and must be very disturbing. You must be thinking, essentially, I don't know that I believe this anymore. And I think that's what Lawrence is going through. And yet, of course, I think he's a man of great empathy. But I think that crisis is at the root of his homily about doubt. There must be a way forward where you ask questions. You must, that certainty, this is rigid, as I see it, this is my interpretation, is rigidity. Rigidity breaks, it snaps. Whereas doubt, questioning, is flexibility, is being open to other ways, in any sense. Of course, Tessa's talking about that scene. Of course, that was, when I read the script, the sermon, the homily, was, I think, for Edward too, for all of us, and for Peter Strawn, who's not here, but I think I'm right in saying that he felt that provocation to say to a room full of cardinals, we mustn't underestimate the importance of doubt, is a shocking proposal and a brilliant one.
Yes.
And I think it resonates beyond just the Vatican issue to the Catholic Church. I think we should be asking questions. Around us are a lot of people with terrifying certainty, and I think we have to use the force of our benign, questioning, doubting spirit to evolve.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time, but please join me in thanking our friends.
Sure. Sure. I still have it. Did you change it? I still have your number.
I'll send
I got you photos.
Thank you.
So it was very much I couldn't find it. I looked at 40 different locations, all of which were almost interactive and everything. And ultimately, like, that's just the one thing. Well, thank you very much. No, thank you. Appreciate it. Feel very much. Thank you.
Thank you.